Good evening and welcome to Basalt Town Council. We have a work session today, and if you notice, there's a lot more people around the table. So we're excited to be hosting the Eagle County Board of County Commissioners this evening, as well as some staff in attendance. We've got a great agenda with wildland urban interface, childcare district, land use code updates from each jurisdiction, and housing updates from each of our jurisdictions. And what's really exciting about a lot of these work sessions, Eagle County and Basalt, by virtue of not just being in the same kind of overlaying land and the jurisdictions, that we're in its unique position geographically as well, right? We're in the middle of the valley, we're kind of the fulcrum together, and what one group does matters a whole heck of a lot to another group, and that's any county government, as a municipality, you want to partner with them. But I think we have an important and very special relationship with these folks. And I'm excited that everybody's here tonight, and I've been excited to be working with Jeannie on RAFTA and Matt on CC4CA, and kind of continuing it now. You're the board chair, Tom, here, and
That's what they tell me.
that's what they tell you. And keep working on those, but also, striving for the same outcomes and the same types of advances in housing and what we do as far as managing growth. And you're just working together in a collaborative, transparent partnership to get things done. So really excited for tonight. And Tom, I'll let you make a few remarks.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, my name is Tom Boyd, and as of 10 this morning, I'm the chair. So, this will be, I guess, the second meeting that I've been able to have the honor of just saying a few words. And I think probably, hopefully, all of us are kind of coming from the same place. I was only sworn in a year ago, but
recording in progress.
There we go. Now it's really on the record. So one of the things I learned, well, really just from growing up in the area, but also from campaigning is, you can walk into Picken County and you can walk into Route County, and then you can be in the town of Basalt, and you can be in the county of Eagle. And it's really not even that far up to Gunnison County either. And that creates a special set of challenges. And certainly I heard from a lot of constituents here and people who are in leadership positions that creates some challenges. But the other thing it does is it really encourages collaboration. And so what has started, I think, as a challenge, and over the decades been a challenge, the town of Basalt has done an excellent job of turning it into a strength, which is to be at the table for so many collaborative meetings and all the different organizations that you mentioned and the different collaborations that we have in the region as we take on these challenges that really ultimately are pretty similar, whether you're in the Eagle River Valley, Roaring Fork Valley, or beyond. So I look forward to this meeting. I think we have a great agenda ahead, and I think we should get started. And thanks for hosting us. Thanks for bringing, arranging the food and everything else. Thanks to the staff and everybody who's helped make this happen, because it's hard to get this many people to get all together in a room, schedules and everything else. So,
Especially with road closures and some of the challenges I know you all face today.
It's actually, I'm glad you brought it up. It's worth making a point that it was a scary and difficult day in the Eagle River Valley today. And I want to salute our sheriff, James Van Veek, Birch, who we're going to hear from in a minute, and our emergency services coordinator, our manager, Jeff Schroll, and everybody in law enforcement who helped deal with a really troublesome situation along I-70 today. And we're glad that we are all here and safe, for sure. Definitely. Thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah.
All right, well, we have Wildland Urban Interface up first, but before, I'm not sure who's going to start that presentation, but before we get started, I just would like to make sure that, let's keep this collaborative. If it's all right with the presenters, let's ask questions as we go. Let's make this a real work session and kind of a foundation for further work that we want to do together, so in the coming year. So who's up for the WUI discussion?
Yeah, I was gonna, before we do that, real quick, does everyone know each other pretty well? And could we just do a real quick roundtable, or even for the folks that I'm sure we have a ton of viewers, maybe we can just go around real quick, and maybe Jeannie or
I really would I'm happy to start the introductions because I have not officially met Gloria. So Jeannie McQueenie, Eagle County Commissioner.
Dieter Schindler, Basalt Council.
Rick Stevens, Basalt.
Angel Dupre-Butchart, Basalt.
You already met me, Tom Boyd, Eagle County Commissioner.
And David Knight, Basalt Mayor.
Ryan Slack, Town of Salt.
Matt Sure, Eagle County Commissioner.
Hannah Berman, Basalt.
Gloria Koshberger, Town Manager, Basalt.
Jeff Conklin, Town Attorney.
Michelle Tebow, Planning Director, Town of Basalt.
Jeff Shull, Eagle County Manager.
Doug,
And then Doug Pattison, Finance Director, Basalt.
Thanks for doing that.
yeah, super. All right. Wildland Urban Interface updates.
I'll kick it off. By kicking it off, I'm going to introduce people that are way smarter than me to kind of give the update on that. Behind me is Birch Barron, who's our Emergency Management Director. Has an office 2 doors down from mine, so I can keep track of all the emergencies going on in Eagle County. And I'll let him take the lead, and I think there are some other agencies that are here. This is definitely a much more collaborative process. It's not just in Eagle County. This has a multi-jurisdictional aspect to it. Much like in the Eagle River Valley, we have the same coalition. There's a very active and a great coalition over here in the Roaring Fork Valley as well. So I'll turn that over to Birch.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm Birch Barron. I'm the Emergency Management Director for Eagle County. We are here to present some high-level slides, but as mentioned, I would love it to be collaborative. So don't feel like you need to hold questions until the end. And then I've brought some very, very expert partners behind me who I'll introduce here in a moment. So if you go to the next slide for me, please. When we started focusing on our county's role in reducing wildfire risk, especially when the commissioners came to our team and said, hey, this is our community's priority. How can we invest as a county in reducing wildfire risk? We're organized around the 3 tenets of the cohesive strategy, national tenets, but these are also our goals. So when we talk about our programs, usually we're putting them into 3 buckets. One is wildfire resilient landscapes. So doing projects on the landscape that help us have the opportunity to slow and stop fires before they impact people, homes, infrastructure, things at risk. The second is fire adapted communities. So supporting home hardening, defensible space, chipping programs that make individual homes less likely to be casualties in emergencies. And then supporting, of course, a safe and effective response, which means making sure that all of our partners have systems in place so that if we do have a wildfire and it does impact people, that we are able to not only put out that fire quickly, but make sure everybody gets out of that fire safely. So those are the 3 tenets we're organized. If you go to the next slide, please. But we don't do this alone, right? So this is important. Over here on the Roaring Fork side, we coordinate under an entity, an umbrella nonprofit called the Roaring Fork Wildfire Collaborative. And I have Angie Davlin, who's CEO, Executive Director of the Roaring Fork Wildfire Collaborative right here. This is coming out of a recognition that not only can one agency not do it alone, but we have so many jurisdictions which, if not used properly, could be a liability, but in our case, it's really a strength. Not just the 3 counties, your forest lands, your local fire district here, but we've got all of these partners who are invested in some way in wildfire mitigation, who come together as part of this collaborative, not just to share what they're working on individually, but to jointly come up with projects, gaps, needs for these fires that unfortunately don't really respect these jurisdictional boundaries that somebody drew on a map 150 years ago. So I want to introduce a couple partners that are here with me today. Just so you know they're here if we have questions. We have Fire Chief Scott Thompson and Fire Marshal Brooke Stott from Roaring Fork Fire and Rescue. Roaring Fork Fire and Rescue is a fire district that covers this area in the town of Basalt. We have Jennifer Scholler, who's acting district ranger for the White River National Forest, Aspen Holy Cross. Aspen Sopris Ranger District. Holy Cross Eagles the other side. We've got 2 in Eagle County, and then Angie Davlin, of course, with the Wildfire Collaborative Roaring Fork Valley, and then Eric Lovegren, who works in my department as the Community Mitigation Manager. So the experts here, the experts have helped me put together some information, so I get to look smart, but really a lot of the work is being done in the seats behind me. Next slide, please. When the commissioners came to me probably about 5 years ago, to Eric and I, and said, hey, we really need to be investing more in wildfire. Where can we make a difference as a county, right? Organizing around these three tenets, it started with a couple $100,000 to support a local wildland mitigation team, and that's bloomed into what for 2026 will be $2 million in funds, both from general funds and lodging tax. About 600,000 plus going into supporting projects on the landscape, so to reduce fuels, pile burns, prescribed fires, mastication projects that reduce the fuel load in those areas that protect our communities on the landscape. We've got about 540,000 going into projects that help support our communities. That's the Real Fire program, which our free home assessment program as a county will come in, help community members understand how they can protect their homes, give them very simple, clear steps they can take to make their homes more wildfire resilient, and then give them access to cost share funding to support that work. If they do that work, we'll meet them 50-50 with cost share to do work that helps protect their property, supporting the wildfire collaboratives and the work those collaboratives do, and chipping programs, planning for future programs all fall under that bucket. And then, you can see almost 860,000 of funds going towards a safe and effective response. We can dive in a little bit more on the next slide, looking first at those landscape projects. In the 24 to 2025 period, which is not when we started this, but that's just the most recent goal setting period. For the commissioners, we now have over 8,000 acres of fuel projects, including a good number of projects over here. Eric just took me on a tour right before coming down here of some of the new projects with the State Forest Service just in the community north of Basalt there, as well as projects in Spring Park and Blue Lake and up Rudai Shores. Again, we know that those are not in the town boundaries of Basalt, but unfortunately fires that start there will also come here. And so we're really invested in finding those strategic areas where we can stop fires before they impact people. And then next slide, please. Looking at those fire adapted communities, over 5,000 residences served by that Real Fire program. So those are either individual home and property owners or neighborhood associations or condos that come to us and say, help us understand how we can protect our structures and our property. And then of those, 532 of them here in the Roaring Fork Valley, $260,000 in cost share assistance for people that participate in that program to help them get that work done. Over $100,000 of that awarded here in the Roaring Fork Valley. Progress towards a unified WUI code. State legislation 2 years ago mandated a statewide that everyone has to have some sort of wildland urban interface code in place that meets a certain standard by, I believe, April of this year is the bumped deadline. Our teams are working very closely with the municipalities to get as close as we can to a consistent code countywide for what that looks like in a way both that reduces our wildfire risk but also creates a reasonable burden on the people who are involved in actually setting and implementing those codes. And then community chipping and slash removal. We've had a tremendous success over on the I-70 corridor side of the county, investing in a program monthly during the summer months. If people remove fuel load, take down dead trees, take down shrubs, put it on the side of the road, we'll come by, drive by, and pick them up. And we've got money allotted from the commissioners from this most recent lodging tax that our hope is to talk to you very soon in the future about how to implement that here in the Roaring Fork Valley as well. And then next slide, please. When we look at a safe and effective response, there's a lot of things we do, but just generally assuming that not everyone knows what emergency management does or what the county's role in emergency management does. Every response is led by your local fire, law enforcement, and EMS agencies, depending on the incident. But we, in many cases, during Blue Sky Days, are that coordination entity. So anytime we're here in Blue Sky Days and nothing's happening, my job is to work with those partners and say, where do you feel challenged? Where do you think if you had, what type of incident would push you to the limits? Where would our systems break? and then help coordinate around those systems. And then during those big incidents, we oversee the Emergency Management and Emergency Operations Center structure. So that coordination entity where we all come together, so law can do their job, fire can do their job, EMS can do their job, but we can also support people who are displaced from their housing, from fires or other emergencies, or traffic disruptions like earlier today. Make sure the community is getting the information they need, not just to keep themselves safe, but also to be resilient and recover well if we do have damage to homes, infrastructure, and property. And then some of the highlights I wanted to call out, just again, food for thought. I put a ton of links on the last slide. So if you guys have questions, want to dive in deeper anywhere, funding through the Roaring Fork Wildfire Collaborative, Pano AI for early wildfire detection cameras, which Roaring Fork Fire is a big advocate for here in the Roaring Fork Valley to get on those fires quick. Emergency alerts, we all use different systems for our emergency alerts as 3 counties, Eagle, Garfield, and Pitkin. But we partnered with Reach Well, all 3 counties, so that our communities who are very interconnected can sign up for any one of those 3 counties alerts or all 3 of those counties alerts through one system and know not just when there's a road closure and they need change plans for the day, but also if they need to get out quickly, we know we can reach them in the way they've said is best for them. And in 130 plus languages and with no sharing of information with us required. And then evacuation planning was another highlight. We've invested in the last year in a system called Genesis EVAC, Genesis Protect, which has helped us take what we've done on the rest of the county and expand it over here, which is really breaking our communities into pre-planned zones so that your public safety teams and your town police has been really, really involved in this together with our sheriffs and the fire teams. Really thinking ahead of time, what are those areas if we did an evacuation? How would we manage that effectively? We're in the mountains. We know there's no new magic evacuation routes that are going to be created. How do we use the infrastructure that we have to get people safely and quickly out of their homes and to a safe location in an emergency? With that, you can go to the next slide, but I do want to turn it over to any questions, and I would welcome some of our partners who have joined us here in the room to jump in if you have anything to add as well.
Thanks, Birch. Anyone have questions?
Not a question, but I appreciate you expanding the chipping program to this side. I remember you talking about it during the emergency meeting, and I was a little bit jealous, so that's going to be a great addition for us.
Absolutely. I know we talked about the cost of it. It is not a cheap program, but one of the directions we got with the lodging tax dollars, the commissioners were very clear. We want this to go directly to programs that our community will see and know that those dollars are going to good use.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Anything for Eric, Chief Thompson, Angie, Jennifer? Anything to add? Any corrections you want to throw me under the bus for anything I said?
I'd like to start working with the town almost immediately to get the chipping program up and running, so we're in place to start making that happen in early June. Like a curbside program like we're running on the other side with minimal involvement or from staff at least. We've been talking to some contractors already that feel capable of taking it on, so I'll circle back with the staff here immediately.
Great. Rick, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna give a little shout out to the training that's about to happen to become a community ambassador that's sponsored by the state of Colorado and Angie's group. I took part in that a year or so ago with a couple of homeowners from Up Valley. And I've been doing this stuff for a while, but I think one of the things that is really got to happen is this WUI ordinance, because we have HOA rules, we have other rules that make sense in terms of housekeeping and land use reviews, but we don't have anything that really has any teeth. We did take advantage of the free chipping program between a couple hundred homes that we have in the districts I manage. We had about 10%, involvement, which I think is pretty low. And it's a hit and miss kind of a thing. The hardest part is getting people to understand what they need to do on the properties to put that stuff out to the curb. So if we can work on that level, that would be great. And, I think the funding's key. We looked at The other thing that's happening is these high-end sales, real estate sales that are going on up in the terrain that's fire-prone, even down in the riparian. During the transactions, they're having to clean up their properties. And the cost on a average home up there in an area like Meadowwood or up on Red Mountain is running about $20,000 to $25,000 to get to a defensible space. So there's been some real reality checks lately going through these processes to get people to either take the challenge of cleaning up their property on, or, you know, after they look at it, accepting the fact that it's going to be beneficial. So it's if we get more people educated and boots on the ground, I know a couple folks up on Basalt Mountain were part of the initiative that we led up there with the Forest Service, and those are the kinds of things that pay off. So, but thanks for coming in. We get that WUI passed.
And
Great.
before we move off that, I'll just add that for the town's part on the wildfire resiliency code, that is something staff's been working on and been in a lot of meetings with a lot of people in the audience here today, and it'll be coming to council, bringing forward that model code with some local amendments with a effort to make it as consistent as possible with our neighboring jurisdictions. There's been a lot of effort on that, and I think everyone's still trying to figure it out and making progress on it.
Sounds like a good example of the collaboration.
I would just add the clock's ticking on that to make a April 1st adoption date. We'll probably need to come back to this group in like the next few weeks. The county commissioners, we'll talk to you on the 3rd of February. And then both collaboratives are available to bring the subject matter expertise to bear. And as mentioned, we've been kind of working on this since early 2024. So there is a good collaborative plan in place.
That's great.
I could also add, I don't know if you need me to step
Yeah, why don't you go up to the podium so we get you on the mic.
Yeah, sure. Hi there, everybody. Jennifer Schuler with the Forest Service. Just want to acknowledge the great work that we've done through the collaborative with Eagle County, with Angie's group, with Roaring Fork Fire. One of the things that Forest Service is doing is really leaning into fuels reduction on a landscape scale. And we have had a number of successful burns and prescribed burns in the Eagle County area, including those that were up the Frying Pan, some of the ones that were up the Lime Park area. So we really want to look at some additional NEPA planning to compound upon the planning that we already have in place. Right now, all of our environmental reviews or NEPA analyses are around those areas that really focus in on wildlife habitat improvement, and we see benefit in the future in looking towards a more broad environmental analysis. So something that we're taking a look at now that we'll be working with the collaborative, but wanted to bring that to you as well so that you're aware of some of the areas that we're leaning into. That can be a multi-year process to go through the planning, but it's a priority for our agency to focus on these hazardous fuels reduction areas, and wanted to make you aware of that. Thank you.
30 seconds on that one. Scott's group here was really strong about the riparian corridors that we have, and we have a designation of environmentally sensitive area along the Frying Pan and Roaring Fork within the town of Basalt. So building setbacks and things like that are significant but based on high water, not based on vegetation or any fuel mitigation. So we looked at a couple spots that we did some work in the riparian to improve that. We learned from some California fires that the riparian habitats can be like a channel for a conduit for flame to go from a lower to a higher elevation. So that's another piece of it. And that ESA requires permitting and evaluation from staff here to see what you have on your property, and a whole process of technical review and some other things that are kind of something we could look at when it comes in front of us. We can maybe make some exceptions if people are in those areas and zones to be able to go ahead and do work. But that's a sort of, we're focused on the confluence of our rivers is basically our community, of course the high country, but that's another piece of it as well. So
Thank
Well,
you.
I think, you know, as we've talked about, the money that you spend, and thank you, the money that we spend preparing is going to, down the road, if you think about it just from a financial perspective, it's going to save us 4-to-1 conservatively, or as high as 400-to-1 in terms of the dollars spent on mitigation versus if and when we have a very dry season, which could be right around the corner. So I'm glad that all this work is being done. Let's keep these conversations and collaborations going. And I think next on our agenda,
Jeannie had one thing first.
did you have something?
I just wanted to comment that I'm so excited to see this chipping program get started over here. And I think the way that the program works, it amplifies every year. It just grows so quickly. You see your neighbors do it. You miss a month and you go, oh, but it's coming the next month. And so there's time in between each pickup to like re-communicate with folks. And I think we'll be sitting here in 3 years' time and go, wow, that was just tremendous that we had nothing and now we have this. And I live in Eric's neighborhood, which is not why we do such a good job as a neighborhood for the chipping program. But you can just see the neighbors, they just sort of, it just catches on like wildfire.
It does, yeah, it will be popular, and there's an education component to that, because everyone who participates in it, you know, it starts the conversation with the neighbors, so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it, and looking forward to that program as well. I think next up we have the child care district topic on the agenda.
I'll let Jeannie kick this off. I think we just had we just kind of wanted a general feel from town of Basalt on your district got passed, and I want to hear from you. How you guys felt about it? What your role is, Jeannie?
He's picking on me because I've worked in the child care field for a long time. And this is the first time that there's money, like there's actual money to spend to help improve and to lower the costs, and it's just fascinating. But I do think that what we have to struggle with is that we as a county have a goal and have funded childcare for a long time, and with our new lodging tax dollars, hope to address the tuition for the parents, you know, because we sort of stabilized the workforce with the stipend, but, you know, parents are struggling. The cost of childcare is really astronomical. So we have spent that. That's a goal of ours, but it's also a goal of the district. And so I'm just curious who's going to grab that family and whose dollars get spent first if we both have a goal. And the Basalt Town Council has for years also funded child care assistance tuition for families. And so I'm just curious how you guys are picturing it, what's going to happen. We have a problem. Like, we all three have money to spend to try and address this as a goal. And so I'm just trying to figure out what are we thinking in terms of whose dollars get spent first, second, third.
Yeah, I think I was part of the CC Coalition, which helped get the service plan designed, help do the public outreach and data review, and then spin up the campaign that passed. And so as written, and it's really up to the board to decide, we'd want to make sure that it could kind of blend, braid, and stack with CCAP, with Kids First dollars in Aspen, with Aspen Skiing Company's possible subsidy program. Even though it would raise 10 to 12 million in this district, that doesn't get the average family down to 7%, which is kind of the goal of what the federal government says you should be spending on childcare per kid. And so I think being able to talk to the district once they have a director in place, they're thinking of getting an interim consultant because they don't have any of the money yet, even though it's been starting to accrue. It's probably won't come to us till March and probably won't start going out into the community until June. But I think being able to make sure that our child care service district director is in touch with Eagle County and Kids First, Skico, and others, I think is important to say, like, whose money should come first and what percentage should each of those districts take on. But it's a nice problem to have.
I'm excited because I see an opportunity to have somebody, kind of like West Mountain does, help do a little bit of air traffic control and quarterbacking of what we're doing, but also helping us all find another gear for how do we help families, how do we help the providers. There's a new pot of money. I mean, it's in and of itself, it's not going to do everything, but I think it's definitely should help us get further along with tackling the problem. So, I mean, it's early days, but it'll be exciting to see what things get stood up.
Yeah, and I think as discussed, the service plan for our district too would have maybe a wider runway of who could apply or be eligible for funds. If you look at who's eligible for CCAP, it's a pretty low income threshold when you compare that to the average or median income in a mountain town. So just like APCHA goes far beyond federal standards for poverty, I think the service district would also have a higher runway. I assume Eagle has kind of a longer runway as well, to make sure that even if you're not qualifying for these kind of poverty level programs, you can get some sort of assistance.
Yeah, Jeannie, you were probably involved in the Cradle to Career initiatives and roundtables, we all were, but Gloria included an email from Maggie on the desk here that speaks to a bullet point down there that the board's revisiting the grant request from Aspen Community Foundation to be able to hire an interim consultant or team of consultants to manage the district's startup operations. And, as I read through this, I thought the same as Hannah that there's these entities up and down from here to Parachute and from here to Vail. Mountain Youth is one I like over there on your side. And I think that it would be good to create some sort of a matrix or something that identifies who's who, where they are, what kind of funds come into their pipelines, and see if there isn't a lot of, how typily there's a lot of duplication of effort and redundancy in those
Shared
systems,
application,
shared
maybe.
applications, and
Yeah.
whole 9 yards. And we experimented with that a little bit, and as those individuals came in, we tried to identify how many of them were like-minded, and then we told that like-minded group to go back and come in with a joint application, and they got more money. And I think that's probably a process that that could come from some place to help this bullet point move along, and maybe if anybody has any thoughts or suggestions, send them to General at Confluence District. But I don't know how, and it's the same thing David's mentioning, is the opportunity to really understand what the landscape looks like in childcare, because it's confusing, and I think there are parents that don't access the asset because it's challenging, and we've got to make it a easier climb in the first place.
I also think if you guys have a software, I don't know how you run Eagle subsidies, but like the entities in the Roaring Fork Valley have been talking about which software they've been using to see if we could actually get a universal application, and I'll be at least on the same software, even if people have additional questions that or information they need to solicit.
One thing I would encourage that we look at is, the infant toddler care is kind of a loss leader on all these businesses, and that's what I saw sitting on the Child Care Commission, years ago, is the real cramp is in infant toddler care because there's so many restrictions on how little kids you can have and how many teachers you have to have for those little kids, and facilities need it because it creates the clients. But if we could somehow expand that and create maybe a subsidized infant toddler care facility, that then would be a feeder for everyone, and it doesn't just put the burden on the current daycare centers. So people always shoot it down, but I think it's something to definitely look at.
It continues to be the long pole in the tent, trying to get.
Yeah, you can only fit so many, babies in, and you start to see like it's easier as the kids get older to get into different facilities or swap facilities, and so yes, we have a childcare issue, but at what age are we really looking at? And, I think there's also some long duplications on, how are we really monitoring our wait lists, and are we going through and checking them constantly? Because you can talk to one facility that says they have 400 people, and another one's like, well, I have 30, and I actually have 3 open spots. And, so just kind of continuing that communication with all these people and making sure that everyone can find what they need.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, one of the things that would be really nice to come out of the taxing district is to have a universal wait list, because so many people don't call other facilities to get off once their kid gets in somewhere, that way you could have one place that would say, like, hey, you're 40 here, but 20 of the people above you are on 4 other wait lists, so you have a better gauge of when you might get care, things like that.
Kind of that navigator concept and a little more integration, just to connect people more efficiently with centers.
Yeah, great example of the collaboration that we talked about at the beginning, right? Like all these issues, but this one, at least as Commissioner McQueenie pointed out, there's a lot of good news here, but as Hannah, or should I say, Councilperson Berman pointed out,
We're not that formal here.
I figured, right. But there's still a gap. And so, for the general public to understand, there is a tendency to say, Eagle County passed a lodging tax, and there's a new childcare district in the Roaring Fork Valley. Problem solved, no, right? What it means is we have more tools in the tool chest, we have more funding. But I'm very curious as well to find out, how do we organize this? And I think it's an opportunity to show the people that we serve that we can put something together that's clear, that's like concise, that's easy to work with. I mean, a universal application. And so I hope that, it looks like the action's underway to get some folks that are good at creating these kinds of systems in place. We can figure out how to do this and do it right. I'm sure it'll be a little bit tricky and maybe a bit of a bumpy road, but hopefully if you're a person seeking some support or tuition support, you don't want to have that feeling that, we had this morning a different conversation about insurance. It just made you feel bedazzled by the complexity of how tricky it can be to make the right application and to try and get the insurance that you need for our child care providers. We don't want that overwhelming feeling to come on the parents that already have, toddlers and youth. It should be as easy as possible, and it should be pretty clear. So there's some work to do there. It seems like it, right?
I think it's just lovely to hear all of the synergy in the room, and there isn't this feeling of, well, that passed, so we're not going to use our funds for that anymore. So I hope I'm not putting words into the council's into your mouths. But when we first passed the lodging tax, we had already been spending $1 million in childcare, in the system of childcare. We still do, even though the lodging tax passed. And it's because we know that there's $22 million in gap for quality and affordability. So I think I was hearing there was some sentiment from the council here to continue whatever, and I don't know what it was. I just know, there's always been something from the general fund that goes towards childcare, and so appreciate that collaboration, that synergy we have. So
Yeah, definitely incremental. I mean, what's already happening, it needs to be, and aligning. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing.
Yes.
Saying, we got it. There's so many parts, and to help people, make it easier to interact with it, and just connect providers and parents, kids.
can I just ask who's going to carry this forward to are you on the Confluence Committee still? Because I just heard some really good ideas about a shared application, priority given to infants, toddlers, and wait list
That can be me.
Okay, I just, there's a email here, and I don't want 12 emails going to them, but if you'll
Yeah.
carry that forward and sort of talk about,
Yeah, the executive committee for the Child Care Coalition was like myself, Rob Stein, and 2 others, and so we've been going out to all the board meetings and kind of helping carry the baton, so they're getting from final vote to first dollar as gracefully as possible.
Sweet.
thanks.
Thanks.
Great.
All right. Anything else on that topic? Doing all right on time, I think we'll be okay. Land use code updates from each of our jurisdictions. I don't want, do you guys like to lead off?
Yeah, I'll do that, and I do want to take a little bit of time, just not very much time, just to introduce the rest of the county staff that's here with me. Beth Oliver is our county attorney. She'll be doing the land use update on where we're at. Yeah, it's at this is the little kids table. Justin Patrick, he's the Eagle County Communications Director. He actually lives over here in Basalt. And Regina O'Brien is our Deputy County Manager. She's the smarter, better version of me. Tori Franks, you'll hear from her in just a little bit. She's our Sustainability Director and all things housing. And then Bill Gibson is online, and he's our Community Development Director. So he's just listening in today. But I just wanted to introduce everybody. So.
And we neglected to say in the introductions, I believe, Angela Anderson, one of our counselors, she's online there.
Okay.
So she didn't introduce herself. I think she's muted and everything, but I just wanted to point that out.
And fun fact, I actually got my graduate degree with Pam Schilling 30 plus years ago.
I didn't know that.
35 years ago. So, yeah.
All right, yeah, so what I thought I'd do is provide you with kind of a general overview of how we're approaching our new code, and then highlight some of the policy positions, policy discussions we're having, and then kind of finish with our schedule going forward. But feel free to interrupt with questions. Bill, as Jeff said's on the line, he can jump in with anything maybe I leave out. Tori's going to follow me with some discussion about our existing housing guidelines, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail with that. But essentially, our land use regulations were adopted originally in 1964. 1991, there was a large amendment that went through the process, but really since 91, we've only had somewhat piecemeal amendments. We haven't done an overall rewrite. And it started to show, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago, that we needed to really do a rewrite. We started to try to play with some smaller amendments and then realized that there were some areas that, I don't want to say they conflicted, but they were amended at different times, so they weren't quite as consistent as they could be. We also wanted to streamline our process, kind of modernize our land use tables, our definitions, and then provide more consistency and clarity in our process. So those were some of the bigger goals, and I've listed some of the policy or some of the purposes of the code on the first slide there.
Do you want to share your slides?
Oh, Jeff?
I sent them to you today. Did you get them?
Oh, I thought you had them.
the emergency managers.
Oh, I sent
All
that
right,
one
yeah, let me see if
earlier.
I can.
Oh, okay, you sent another
You're
one.
looking at them, but we're not.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, I thought they were up on the
Let me,
screen, sorry. Let's
When
see,
you said, "On that slide," I went,
that would be super helpful if we could connect those, let's see.
Just had the wildfire one.
I just sent it just now.
If
Sorry
there's
about
something
that.
for me to connect to, I can do that too, if there's a.
If you go to
Oh, yeah.
the first page of our agenda, it's on basalt.net.
Okay.
Talk amongst yourselves.
There's a link to
Could I ask a question while we're surfing?
Sure.
Go for it.
I spent a couple years now on the Pickett County Growth Advisory Committee, and they have a very distinct boundary for their discussions as far as what they're planning on for their 2050 goals and land use policies and so on. And I found it interesting that there was very little dialogue about what's going on in Eagle County. So I think that's a missing piece of our puzzle, is how these translate.
Or if you just want to copy it and put it up.
So I, just to encourage you to
I found it.
look at that.
You got
They
it?
are looking at 5 different zones for housing to be developed, including the resort
Sorry about
area,
that. I thought
the
everybody
outlying
had it.
urban growth boundary area, the maybe rural remote, and then maybe rural.
And in this linear valley, it's really been an interesting conversation, so it's just something to put on the back burner.
What was the name of that committee or?
It was the Pickett County Community Growth Advisory Committee, Pickett County Growth Advisory Committee. And they just came out with their latest update on that a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And they have some decent data too on how home size and home intensity, like if it has a commercial use, like being a short-term rental, impacts traffic, impacts number of jobs created and things like that.
Okay.
It's not gonna let me sign in.
It should have
I wonder if there's something I can connect to, like what we have.
What's that?
Not sure has basalt pin.
That's like those old, man.
Is that old one?
Those are out of touch. Those are new, fancy.
We rebranded.
The old sleeping dinosaur.
Okay. I should have checked before I.
Does look like a dinosaur. Is it supposed to be a
Google's
dinosaur?
gonna be a problem.
Oh, it's the hill.
Oh.
It's marine lore, but they call it the sleeping dinosaur. I'm sure Rick knows all about it. Rick was probably there when they drew it. I think actually who was the guy?
I
Yeah,
could
his
share
CI
it
took
from my computer if I can.
I can also keep talking for a bit to fill in the time. I apologize for that. I thought you guys had we had the slides up, but
What was his name?
essentially, in terms of the purpose of the new code, as I mentioned, we're really trying to modernize the regulations, the land use tables and the definitions, provide some clarity and consistency in our review process, also streamline our review process, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute about how we're approaching that. We also want to include or adopt some additional or new regulations relating to protection of natural resources, and then modernize our site development standards. And by that, I mean really the focus is on our parking regulations and some of our other regulations that'll help make the process a little bit easier. We started this process back in 2023. We engaged a consultant out of Denver, and we held about 6 work sessions with the board to talk about higher policy issues. Higher level policy issues. We wanted to get feedback before we really started drafting on some of these issues that we hadn't had a chance to talk to the board about. So that was 2023. In 2024, we engaged with the board on a more detailed level. The board appointed an advisory committee in April of 24. And we then had a bunch of work sessions with our planning commission and our advisory committee, about 8 or so sessions for each of those different boards to get feedback on, again, some of the bigger policy issues, as well as some of the actual, as well as some of the actual text. And then last year, we really dove into the first couple of chapters. So we've got chapters 1 through 4 written right now. We're working on chapter 5, which we'll be talking to the board about on Tuesday of next week, to focus a little bit more on some of our housing regulations. But to dig into, well, let me back up. If you're interested in, because I wanted to highlight these kind of in the beginning, if you want to, are you doing?
I'll be doing it.
Oh, okay. If you could go forward to slide 5. One of the things we've done so that we can ensure that we're bringing the public into the process is we put together 2 different websites. One is through our Eagle County website, and it's our rewrite platform. And if anyone's interested, or if the public's interested, you can go to that website and watch the videos of each of the meetings that we had. There's also white papers that our consultant prepared, that those are all loaded on there as well. And then we have all our public comment on there. So work sessions for advisory committee, planning commission, and the board that go back to 2023. And then we engaged a company called Encode out of Texas, who put together a really cool software platform for us. And so our current regulations are in this platform, but there's also a portal. There you go. There's also a portal where the public can go to see the draft of the new code. And we've also handled public comment that way. We have over 1,000 comments at this point from the public and from staff that are in the portal. And our consultant and myself, we can go through and actually respond to the public comment through that portal, which has been, it's been a really good tool because people can see the comments as they're, or the responses as they, not immediately, but in response to their comments. And it's a great platform to have everything all in one place. So if you're interested in seeing that as well, that ENCODE platform is a great place to start in terms of the new code. And then I'll highlight some of the bigger topic areas that we focused on and some of the policy approaches for those. And then happy to answer some questions about those. But some of our bigger policy goals involved our zone districts and our land use, and then again our land use tables and use-specific standards, our definitions, natural resources, site design, of course our housing guidelines, and then administration, development, and review. With regard to our zone districts and our land use, we really wanted to develop some strategies to simplify and consolidate some similar zone districts. We have 85 PUDs in the county right now, and that's made it really difficult to staff to administer and enforce 85 different PUD guides. And so we've also developed 2 mixed-use zone districts. One is a little bit more focused on more, I would say, more simple uses. There's a larger mixed-use zone district that involve more complex uses. The hope is to potentially encourage or incentivize existing PUDs to maybe convert to one of those straight mixed-use zone districts, and then in the future to possibly avoid having more PUDs in the future, have developers who are coming through take advantage of one of those new mixed-use zone districts. So we've developed those. That's been will be a big change. And then another big change will be development of a new zone district map. We have changed the terminology of our zone districts. They're similar in use and scope, but we have new names for them. Some are more focused, urban focused, some are more rural focused. We will be developing, or in the process of developing, a zone district map, and that's going to be rolled out in June. We plan to have some workshops over on this side of the valley and over on the Eagle River side, several during the month of June. So we can walk through those specific changes with property owners and just let them know what those zone districts will entail. They're very similar. We've tried to keep them very similar, but modernize some of the uses, particularly in the land use table. And then next slide. So our land use table and use-specific standards. Our table, we found that we ran into issues with uses that developers would want to come in and develop, but they either weren't listed in the table or our table was not specific enough. We have a catch-all use called a resort recreational facility, and we found that that was being applied to every use that would come in that was a wedding facility, for example, or a guide group or something that didn't fit within another box. And then we have use-specific standards that didn't quite fit as well, that talked about how many beds you could have and how many people could come and what the traffic counts, impacts were. And they just started to, we ran into situations where we just didn't have specific uses that we needed in that table or the flexibility to apply them. So we've updated and kind of modernized the uses in that table. And then in conjunction with that, we're updating the use-specific standards that we would use to evaluate some of those more impactful uses. And then next slide. So our definitions. The definitions are kind of funny. We have a lot of words that are defined that aren't used in the code. And then we have words that we use all the time that aren't defined. We also have a lot of definitions that include standards embedded in the definitions, which always cause problems as well. So we're cleaning up the definitions, making sure we have definitions for terms we use a lot, and then removing standards. For example, there's a definition, I think, for a recreational or RV park, and it lists right in the definition that you can't stay in one place for more than 2 weeks. That should be in a standard, not in the definition. So cleaning up those things. And then next slide, I think, is natural resources. We're revamping our standards for natural resources as well, focusing on identification of a wildlife habitat, and then looking at appropriate avoidance, minimization, and mitigation strategies for those habitats. And we're also focusing on high priority habitats that have been identified by CPW, and then asking or requesting the appropriate mitigation for development in those areas. We're also including new standards for protection of aquatic resources. One of the big kind of policy issues for us is to focus on changes to our stream setbacks. Those have changed over the years. Currently, we have a 75-foot stream setback. We're looking at the possibility of reducing that to 50 feet in certain zone districts, keeping it at 75 in others. Also considering what would be allowed within that setback based on different impacts. We're also looking at reforms to the scope and application of our EIR reports, so environmental impact reports, and application requirements for those. And then in terms of site design, so next slide. One of the big changes will be updating our parking regulations. I think one of the reasons we have so many PUDs is that we have so many requests for variances to our parking standards. I think we overpark and have for a long time. So we are looking at that. We will be back in front of the board probably next week with some additional recommendations for some changes just based on discussions with staff. But we are going to be reducing, I think we'll be reducing the requirements. And of course, we're going to be focusing on those reductions with consideration of transit-oriented developments and mixed-use development. Another issue that's come up with us in the past is we have a standard that requires 2 access points to subdivisions, and we're looking at whether that should be revised to conform with the International Fire Code and that standard for dual access. That will be coming back or coming to the board probably in the next month or so. So we'll be talking to you about that as well. And then next slide is housing. Our current housing policy is in our housing guidelines, and we're looking at incorporating those guidelines into our code in the form of inclusionary zoning requirements. So Tori's going to talk a little bit about what our current policy looks like, and we're talking to the board on Tuesday. So I don't want to spoil the discussion.
Spoil the fun.
Yeah, spill the beans. But we'll be talking about what those inclusionary requirements look like, what the percentages might be, and then what those requirements, how those requirements would be implemented. So that'll be a big discussion next week. We also, in our housing guidelines, we have a number of incentives to encourage developers to provide additional affordable housing, but we haven't had the standards built into our code to help us implement those incentives. So we're now creating standards for those. So some of those include an expedited review process for certain projects that meet a certain AMI threshold or a certain number of deed restrictions. There's also density bonuses and a number of other items that we haven't been able to really implement, but they've been in our guidelines. We're also considering appropriate locations for various housing types. In our commercial zone district right now, a person, if you wanted to develop housing, you'd have to do a special use permit. So we're looking at whether we should take that out. Maybe that's limited review, maybe it's a use by right. We're also looking at where and how and whether ADUs are permitted. And then one issue that's been really big for the county is non-conforming lots and ADUs. We have a lot of non-conforming resource parcels. Our current code requires a special use permit for approval of an ADU on those parcels. So the board sees a lot of public hearings on a simple ADU. We're looking at changing that perhaps to limited review to make it easier for people to build ADUs on those types of lots. Next slide is our administration and development and review. This is a big chapter, and we've actually devoted 2 work sessions with the board on this particular issue. These are all our development standards and all our deadlines for review of applications and files. We're really looking to try to streamline not only the application requirements, so we have a sketch plan and a preliminary plan for PUD and for subdivision. They right now look very much the same, so we require almost the same thing for sketch that we do for preliminary. We're looking at changing that to put kind of sketch back into sketch, so it really is a concept review, and include standards for waiver of certain application requirements, and then perhaps delay submittal of certain application materials. We're also looking at additional administrative approvals for certain types of files, like subdivision exemption, plats, SIAs. A lot of those now go to the board. So if we can streamline that process by having staff approval that would have a call up to the board, that should streamline a lot of our processes as well. We're also looking at our public benefit standard. We have a public benefit standard with our zone change applications. In the past, first we're looking at whether we should retain that standard, but if we do, we're looking at whether we should make it more detailed. In the past, we've gotten a lot of pushback from developers who say that it's too nebulous, they don't know what to provide. This usually comes up with PUDs. So we're looking at whether we're going to keep it and then whether we should make that a little bit more detailed. We're also looking at an expedited review process, both for Prop 123 housing, but also for other housing that may qualify based on AMI thresholds and deed restrictions. And then again, simplifying the review process, cutting down on some of the deadlines. We have several phases of review right now, and we're trying to analyze whether we could cut back on those, maybe I think right now we have at least 3 phases, maybe we only have 2 in the future. The other thing we're trying to simplify is our PUD amendment process, as well as our special use permit process, possibly make that administrative in certain situations. Those can involve lengthy public hearings, and it'd be nice to find a way to make that more streamlined as well. The other thing that will be new for us is we're developing a special expedited process for disaster recovery. And that's something we'll look into. We'll be in front of the board, I think, in February and March on this chapter. So we'll have that in front of you. I want to get Birch's input on that as well.
We actually could have used that during Lake Christine.
Yeah.
We had kind of some lengthy subdivision building permit reviews for a few people that had lost their homes in the Lake Christine fires.
And then in terms of schedule moving forward, so next slide, please. So we have several meetings scheduled with the board from January all the way through July. Our proposed adoption date is July of this year. And so coming up, in case anyone's interested, our next topic will be impact mitigation, including a big policy discussion on our housing requirements. And then February and March, we'll focus on administration and development review. April, we're going to do kind of a review of the entire code, and I think we'll probably be circling back on some of the policy issues that have come up, parking in particular, perhaps even stream setbacks. We may come back to you with some refinements on those. And then the next slide is just the rest of the schedule. We've got meetings in May, June, and July. June, again, is when we'll present the new zone district map to both sides of the valley. And then July will be our adoption date. And then just to mention kind of in big picture again with this project, we're also looking at a comp plan rewrite in 2026, or at least getting started on that. Our comp plan is relatively old. It's from 2005. And we chose to rewrite our land use regulations first and then work into a redevelopment of our comp plan and some of our area plans. So we'll be doing that as well. And then one other thing we've done with this new code is we've pulled out all of the technical requirements relating to engineering standards and developed a separate engineering manual, which will make the process, I think, smoother as well. That will be amended and adopted and amended by the board, which will help with the review process. We will be incorporating our housing guidelines into our code, so I think that'll streamline things as well. And Tori, I think, will mention a little bit of this, but with our housing guidelines and our housing regulations, we're hoping to simplify the process somewhat there. We have some somewhat complicated formulas that we use in our analysis now, and we're hoping to get away from some of that. So I know I talked a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions. We're super excited about this. It's been a long time coming, but I feel like we're moving forward at a pretty good pace right now and have a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon.
Thanks, Beth. A lot of similar things I think we're trying to do as far as kind of refactoring, streamlining, making it easier for the public to understand, making it easier for people who have to use the code to understand it, and just good stuff. Rick?
You're tracking really well with Pickett County. It's the same conversation and the same timeline, and frankly, it looks like. One of the things that I learned that I wasn't aware of was that close to 90% of the land in Pickett County is federal or state or open space, and so it's really limited as to where anybody can go to do anything, which puts a lot of pressure on the Mid-Valley. And there's been a lot of discussions about how the Mid-Valley growth has really been the responsible party for the traffic congestion on Highway 82. And I have a hard time dealing with that personally because I understand a little bit differently where the pressure comes from to service, you know, a large resort at the end of a narrow linear valley. So infrastructure and public benefit is really important to me personally, and I want to acknowledge Mr. Durox back there is here as a person who's worked on Crown Mountain for a couple of decades at least. And that is our resort. That is our Mid-Valley community asset that is irreplaceable and is going to be impacted at some level by what we're seeing in the Eagle County portion of the valley, and further down valley too, for that matter. And we've been talking to them informally, or I have, for a long time about how their struggle is not about taking care of what they have, but taking care of what could come in terms of demand for that space. And, you know, I've been all over the West to different places for different activities, and I haven't found a better place yet that offers the variety of experience that Crown Mountain does. And I just really want to make sure that we include that in the planning and in the public benefit area, that it's a top priority to keep that place operational, provide maybe a small facility for it, or we've got an ordinance later about turf coming up, and I always think of, when I hear that word, that we could use some multi-purpose fields down there and things like that. And I think it's one of the things that'll relieve some of the pressure that comes from having to live here and work here and grow a family here, because the resort is the resort. Our resort is Crown Mountain, 365 days a year, and you can go walk in there for free. And I just think it's probably 130 acres of the most precious land we have around us. And it's adjacent to significant open space. So just as a plug for those guys, hopefully we can include that in any discussions we have with PUD amendments or, you know, other developments.
They could definitely be, you know, they could benefit from some of the changes to the code in the sense of our, you know, PUD amendment process. That is, as you know, part of a large PUD, but if we could simplify the PUD amendment process, that could potentially help, you know, that park in terms of new uses or proposed uses. Yeah.
I know it's linked to the intersection improvement, which is the other piece of infrastructure that's a pretty big deal around here too right now. I've been hearing from Soapers Village guys too that what's happening, you know, they don't quite get it yet, but it'd be great. I appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Rick. Michelle, were you gonna?
Do you want to have Tori do the housing?
Sure, yep, yeah, I can pass on
We do it
to
that
Tori
way
for
then.
housing.
Okay.
Ours works that way too.
Okay.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yep, hi, Tori.
Hi, guys. So Jeff, you asked me to provide, or just do a quick summary, and I'm so glad Michelle is there, sort of comparing Eagle County's current housing policy with Basalt's current housing policy, and I think I did an okay job. I'm just trying to find, maybe I can just talk through it rather than show you just like a Word document that I developed. But, and Michelle, you can check me. I would say the application piece of our housing policy is quite similar. It looks like Town of Basalt starts to apply on residential development with 2 or more lots. Eagle County's is 3 or more, so pretty close there. And then on the commercial side or non-residential side is that it looks like all of the commercial development in Basalt triggers their housing guidelines, and Eagle County's is after 3 jobs are generated. The mitigation rate is where we start to see a little bit of a difference. In the town of Basalt, it's 25% of the net residential square footage and 20% of the total residential units. And then on the non-residential side, it's 15% of new employees. For Eagle County, currently, the base math is, on the residential side, is 25% of units. But where we get into a lot of our where we've landed in our complicated application of this is that we then weight certain deed restriction types depending on what they're providing. So if a developer is choosing to provide price capped deed restrictions, then we give that value of the deed restriction is 2 to 1. So essentially the mitigation rate there would be 12.5%. If a developer is choosing to mitigate using what we call resident occupied for sale units, so this is a deed restriction type that restricts residency and occupancy of people who live and work in Eagle County or in the Roaring Fork Valley. Like we set the boundary of the Roaring Fork Valley essentially. On the for sale side of resident occupied, that's a 1-to-1, so you're providing 25% of units. And then on the resident occupied rental, if you're choosing to provide that, then it's sort of half to 1. So you're providing basically 50% mitigation rate. On the non-residential side for Eagle County, we have that same weighting for those different deed restricted types, and we apply our mitigation rate to 45% of new employees generated by the project. So that's where we have I think a touch more. Our mitigation rate is a little bit higher than Basalt's. And then the definitions, I think, is where we start to see some variability. I think town of Basalt, you all, it looks, at least from my read, follow similar to like what APCHA does, which is categories, income categories. So 0 up to 5. So you go, under 50% all the way up to 200% AMI, and it goes up on a ladder. Eagle County says price capped rental is 80 to 100% AMI. Price capped for sale is 100 to 140. And then again, back to this resident occupied concept, residency and occupancy restrictions, but no price caps. I would also say that another key piece for Eagle County is that when we price cap units, whether they be for sale or rental, we do not verify income, if that makes sense. So we price cap based on a level of affordability based on AMI, but we are not verifying income, which I think is a difference between our two entities. So I guess my headline takeaways are the differences between the two entities in housing policy is, one, Eagle County allows for resident occupied deed restrictions. Our definition, so Basalt is based on income and income qualification, I believe, and we do not have that. I would say to sort of Beth led into this, with sort of having the opportunity to think through our housing policy and potentially bring it sort of inside the Eagle County land use regulations, we're really hoping to find a housing policy that is more simple to understand from the public and a developer, but also for me to be able to explain and verify that these developments are meeting our policy. And the other piece that I think has been really important that we're really trying to drive at is, again, there's a nice long page of incentives in our housing guidelines that we have not been able to really apply or utilize. Because as DeBeth said, we just didn't have the criteria to say, okay, what would qualify a development for priority permitting or, partnership with the housing authority. So to me, that's one of the bigger opportunities is to try to build in our incentives so that hopefully we are assisting development in providing housing that we know we need. I feel like that was a lot of information that I just walked through, but let me know if you have questions or want to revisit any concepts or.
I just want to premise too that, in the past, there's been some loggerheads about, developments we might approve in unincorporated Eagle County, and they don't meet Basalt's requirements, and so we get referral comments on that. I think we look at it a little bit differently. We have, our housing guidelines are, different than all 7 municipalities in Eagle County. And we don't look at them as right or wrong. We don't look at a single municipality's housing requirements and go, why'd they do that? No, we actually applaud everything that each town is doing because they feel like that's what's right for their community. We absolutely applaud that. We know where our deficiencies are. I think Beth, was talked through some of that, and Tori, we've got some more work sessions coming up with the Board of County Commissioners to try to, make ours, we think more modernized. Will we match Vales or Eagles or Avons? Probably not. But we're trying to get it into a much better place. And so we recognize the differences of, from our side of the fence, and we actually celebrate what you're doing on your side of the fence. And as you know, it's difficult. We don't have a uniformed Eagle County municipal housing guideline from the top of Vail Pass to over here to Basalt, up to Red Cliff. It's, each jurisdiction kind of does their own thing, and we recognize that, and we're trying to, honor that autonomy that each of the jurisdiction has. So I just premise that, like, I look at your housing regs and go, I think they're great. If that's what serves your community, we support that. So I just wanted to premise that's always been a loggerhead in years past, and for a variety of reasons. But I think at the end of the day, we're, I knew, early on when Ryan and I used to walk through this stuff that I could, I really feel like Basalt's got a good head on their shoulders in terms of getting in the game for affordable housing, particularly in the Roaring Fork Valley, where I would probably argue your costs of land and prices are probably a little rougher than most of the Eagle River Valley.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the codes, particularly these days, as we've all gone through time and had applications testing out our code, so we tweak those and then we see what everybody else is doing and then we tweak them based on those things too. So did we get that document to you guys? Because we can get this, Hannah's looking at it right now.
I just emailed it to Group.
Okay. But as you'll see, looking at that, and as Tori went through tier, you'll see mostly a similar structure and criteria. So they're really not that different. But I think they always, to Jeff's point, will be and will always tweak based on each other's and all of our experiences.
Appreciate that. I mean, I guess my question would be, we're trying to move. The problem is getting more acute, right? We're trying to look for ways to drive more affordable housing. Are you guys looking at anything as part of your code updates to, is the ADU use by right potentially, and what else, is there anything else that you guys would want to share as far as outcomes that you're trying to go for? Because like Tom and I talked about this earlier, like there's, like 7+ you guys, and then there's Pitkin too for us and Garfield, right? So it's nothing, you can't make it so they're all exactly the same. But I think what we need to be trying to strive for is a couple things. One is trying to solve what are effectively regional problems, but also trying to discourage jurisdiction shopping, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, those are kind of the two things that I see as what makes the most sense. So that way, when you have your urban growth boundaries and the plans that all these different groups have that sometimes overlap, sometimes don't, that people, you can hold to those as best you can. We can support each other to that end.
I think that definitely would be, you know, a goal. I think we, you know, both in Tori or Beth, please jump back in. Our codes that are 30 years old, the presentation that Beth just went through, turns out they're our own worst enemies, quite frankly, because developers look at that stuff and go, why would I do an affordable housing project in Eagle County? And so we are trying to look at, you know, how can we incentivize in a much more, stable and a way that, you know, folks can rely on. What you're trying to do is what you're going to, you know, get if we can have standards that are based around that. And I think to the details of that answer, I don't think we're there yet. I think we have more discussions to have with the Board of County Commissioners in additional work sessions as we work through these land use regs. And by the way, you're all Eagle County residents. Get online and share those comments with us. I mean, you know, submit them however you would like to do that. I think it's important to.
I could hit a rock from miles.
I feel like a resident of both counties.
Two homes.
I'm off
If you're in Pickett County, sorry, we can't help you, but, no, those are things that we can continue to talk about. And I think, you know, one of the things that I mentioned to Gloria in an email earlier this week is, you know, I think there are areas that we probably just need to talk more. You know, we haven't had good discussions on, I think attorneys in the room are always gonna go, we got your referral comments, but, you know, we can't abdicate our land use authority. You can't give it to us and we can't give it to you. We have to kind of live within the boundaries of our own land use regulations. But that doesn't mean that we can't talk and we can't have certain conversations. You know, there's, the infrastructure to how to make Crown Mountain a better thing. That's why we're spending $3.5 million going out to bid later this week on the Valley Road improvements. Tweaking our PUD amendments, so whatever they want to do in the future, it's much easier, much more streamlined. If they want to build a rec center, if they want to expand more stuff on the property, quite frankly, we encourage that and don't want to be in the way. And then, I think have better conversations with where is low-hanging fruit in terms of affordable housing, whether it's in your boundaries or just outside your boundaries that we can partner on. We're constantly looking for, that's the name of the game for us in the Eagle River Valley, is partnerships on affordable housing. The stuff behind the Basalt High School is a good example with the Habitat homes, and I know there's some other things that are happening that, out there that, we look at and, we want to hear, what's the town's take on that. Knowing that, it's a two-edged sword. We want affordable housing. We want teachers to not drive from Parachute. We want your employees, like my road and bridge folks that drive from Rifle every day, except for today. And those are classic examples of what we've been doing by shipping our employees down Valley. When you guys had rock closures on 82 yesterday, we had a murderer on I-70 today, and it had, we've had fires in the canyon, mudslides in the canyon, mudslides over on 82. We can't get our people here to operate. How do we fix that, knowing full well that it taxes the infrastructure that's in the Mid-Valley already? And so those are conversations I think we're stronger by talking together more about those. And I think sometimes we don't talk until, oh my gosh, one of us has a huge land use file and, the public's up in arms about something. And, I think it behooves us to have that open dialogue sooner than later.
Hi. Rick? I just think that's the position we've come to after 30, 40 years of living together over here, and that's a great position. I was joking with Tom about a dinner we had with the commissioners when Willits was being discussed, and Leroy was there, and the term cherry picking came up a couple times, and Basalt was cherry picking the Mid-Valley, and so at the end of that, it was Bud Gates and Jeanette Phillips and James Johnson.
Yeah.
And James was upset. And at the end of the work session, we served cherry pie for dessert. And that started us down a little bit different path. But then the tree farm came along, and that was a 9 or 10 year, argument. But I think your point, I read a quote today from person who was commenting on what's going on in the world today, and that divisiveness doesn't lead to compromise. And I think that's what we're trying to do here, is find good middle ground on all these policies. And I would like to ask, us to think about what is the area that gets negotiated the most? What part of the code gets negotiated the most, and why is it negotiated the most? Picking County's approach to their advisory committee was to try to start off the conversation with shared values and the character of the existing environment and all those things, and that was creating significant divisiveness. Everybody had a different idea of what quality of life was. So after 18 or 24 months, they put that aside and just said, you guys have to focus on a bigger picture, and we have to have 26-0 votes on the recommendations that are now being implemented into the master plan. And I think that, to your point you just made, is that, we can continue to jurisdictional shop and we can continue to do these things, but it's not really solving the problem, and I think people are ready to set aside some of their personal ambition to create a overall better arena here to play in. So.
In my How the World Has Changed, and my commissioners have heard me say this before, please cherry pick. Annex everything that'll stand still for you if you would like, because I think that's in the best interest of Basalt, so you can control more of your own destiny over here. You will not find the county opposing annexation stuff that comes through your doors. We would, hallelujah, go for it. But
We will buy you all the cherry pie that you'd like. But we all face this together, but I was really excited about the land use rewrite, which some of my friends looked at me strangely when I'd say that out loud. And I said, this is the most important thing I think that we're doing at Eagle County. I really believe that. And of course, then I see all the other things we're doing and realize those are important too. But we face two major, big macro pressures. I mean, Leroy, I think you can speak to this better than anybody. You and your family have been here a long time. I know Rick has, my fellow commissioners and I, we've been in, all of us have been here for a long time and seen changes. So history is the first thing that we're up against. And that this morning at the start of our meeting, I read a letter asking for the county commissioners to please control and limit growth. That letter was from 1986. I was 11 years old at the time. And that the point I was trying to make is the same point I'm making here, which is, we all have been working on this for a long time. But the way that each of our valleys have grown in parallel is part of the thing that we now, I wish we'd go back in the time machine in 1986 and say, hey, as we develop this large single-family home area that at the time we thought there's just land aplenty and we can just we should have maybe done that a little differently. And so now it's hard, you can't go back in time. And so we're trying to retroactively handle a situation where all of those homes now are more or less folks that probably don't work in the service industry. My father worked in the service industry and we lived in a single family home with an ADU. That's pretty rare these days, right? It's just a different time. So that's one of the big challenges we face. And the other is the big macroeconomic forces that are essentially on our real estate market. I'm not telling anybody in this room anything they haven't heard before. But what I do think, what Beth has shown us here today and what we're going through in our land use regs, is we are rewriting a code to be simpler, cleaner, clearer, and to set the table for the kind of development that we do want to see. And ultimately, how can I characterize that? It's redevelopment in the urban cores to try and roll out the red carpet for the kind of redevelopment and infill development that we think our community generally needs. And also then to preserve some of our rural outlying areas a little bit. And that's an oversimplification, but Beth is not waving to me from the back of the room saying shush, so I must have gotten it somewhat right. And I think Manager Schroll spoke very well just here a minute ago in terms of the relationship we want to have with you all as we kind of come together in a regional capacity to take on these issues, because they are quite similar. Our valleys do mirror each other in different ways, and yet at the same time we face such different challenges over here. So even though we may not have exactly the same housing strategies and housing incentives, and we may not have exactly the same code, hopefully what we're coming to today and in the future is that the spirit of all those documents and all of those regulations are aligned, and that's what you and I were talking about a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
We're all heading in the same general direction, even if there's a little bit of detail that's not perfectly aligned.
I would just want to make sure that y'all get to see Beth's slideshow, mostly because she referenced how to get to ENCODE, and it's a place to give comments. And even if you have no comments, go and see ENCODE, because it is so cool the way that it can compile these comments, and it might be something you want to think about if you ever have to do something like this, because it is really quite a tool. And but get on there and leave us some comments, or just see what a cool place it is.
It's really powerful. And one other thing I'll mention is the map will be a major component of this as that's rolled out. I think it's worth highlighting that that's one to pay attention to.
I know we're a little over time, but I do want to give Michelle a chance for some updates as well. This is a really good discussion, make sure we cover everything.
Well, thank you. I'm going to make sure that my counterpart, James Lent, Assistant Planning Director, gets introduced here as well. He is the brains in the operation and the history here. The great news is I can basically say ditto to Beth's presentation, so thanks. We are undergoing basically the same thing for all of the same reasons. We are really much in parallel. We're just about 4 to 6 months behind your schedule, on a much smaller realm, of course, because we're just Basalt and not the county. But certainly a similar thing where we've done piecemeal amendments since our code was adopted as well. So we're sharing that, the pinch points there, and trying to work on those. Our process started in Q3 of last year, and we hope to have that finished by the end of this year. We don't have ENCODE, but I'm sure it's really awesome. But we do have an amazing citizen group that is our working group that's helping us make sure that our code is following the values of the master plan. And we haven't gotten to outlaying the schedule for our council yet about when you get to look at the things, but it's coming. And it's really just all the same things: upgrading our development review process, our annexation process, streamlining a lot of our processes, updating. We have standards in our definitions as well. There's just a lot of things that need to get updated there. What we were going to highlight tonight is that our council adopted a suite of 5 different affordable housing strategies last year. And so we're really working to put those strategies into land use code applications. So a quick example of that, so that we don't eat up your time, is that we are moving from basically a zoning code that barely allows ADUs anywhere, to allowing ADUs everywhere. So it's kind of our first low-hanging fruit item, if you will. And then beyond that, we are updating our mitigation rates. So Tori was right. She mentioned that our commercial mitigation rate for affordable housing is 15%. We're going up to 30%. We've learned through a recent housing study that our inclusionary housing rates are gaining us the most affordable housing in the valley for mitigation rates, so we're really happy with that. And then just some simplification. So our mixed use mitigation is really complicated between 2 different calculations, and so we're picking one. That's the quick and dirty of the items. A fun thing for you guys tonight that you may not know, but we are participating in a good deeds buy. Hopefully tonight we'll get authorized in partnership with Eagle County, so excited about that, bringing all of the worlds together. But that's kind of the quick and dirty. We're really early in our process here.
I was just reminded, maybe as a closing, what a great win the Eagle County and the town of Basalt had, and that's the preservation of the Mountain Valley and Aspen Basalt Mobile Home Park. And a huge thank you to Jeff Conklin. We know that you did a ton of the heavy lifting on getting that thing across the goal line, and so I think that's a great regional collaboration. But we're proud to be your partners with that one.
And I got to work with Tori a lot on that, and there were a lot of great collaboration, and I was really pleased to see it get across the finish line.
And that was I mean, one of the most game-changing, meaningful things that happened. Everybody did that together, and that's, I think, what's exciting about seeing not just our two organizations, but what everybody can do together. Now, we're all rowing in the same direction, even if we're all a little different, and I think that's that's the important part. Yeah, that's a great call out. Right. Well, thank you all for making the drive over. Thank you for the pizza. We should do this again sooner rather than later. I know we'll have a new council coming on board, and I say new council, at least a couple new members in April. So, yeah, looking forward to that and getting together with you guys again sometime in the not too distant future. But seeing you all at the places that we always see you.
Yep.
Ski day.
Thank you all.
We do have a ski day.
Ski day. When the
Ski day, yeah.
is,
Ski day's coming up. Don't miss that.
March.
I think it's March 13th.
Right, Snowmass, yeah. That's a good plug. If the public's watching and public people show up there as well, kind of everybody's welcome. It's a really great informal way to talk with people from all kinds of jurisdictions and municipalities and counties. So it's a lot of fun.
We had our first one, no injuries.
Where else can you get a council person for 6 to 8 minutes and they can't leave you?
Yeah, that's right.
On the lift.
On the lift.
It's really great to meet with y'all. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Nice to meet you. I don't know that we ever.
I'm going to go to basketball.
Tell
I'll
me,
call in.
pronounce your name again
I'll
for
be
me.
listening.
Good evening and welcome to our regular town council meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 13th, 2026, first meeting of the year. We started a little late here. We just finished up a work session with the Eagle County Board of County Commissioners. So now we're getting into our regular meeting. Before I call the meeting to order, just a reminder, you can join the Zoom meeting on basalt.net. Just go to the agendas and meetings tab. Find today's date, and you'll see the link and all the information to join there if you'd like. So with that, I will call the meeting to order, and Pam, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Are we ready? Okay. Let's start with Angela Anderson. She is...
Yes. Oh, here.
Thanks. Thanks, Angela. Thank you. David Knight.
Here.
Angel Dupré-Bouchard.
Here.
Dieter Schindler.
Here.
Rick Stevens.
Here.
Hannah Berman.
Here.
And Ryan Slack, if he's in. He was going to try and call in.
Ryan, is that you?
Yeah, I'm here.
There he is. Thank you, Ryan. Okay. Well, all the aces are here, just not in their places.
All right.
It's got a good ring to
Butchered
it, Pam.
Yeah.
Next up,
Well played.
we have item 2, which is our consent agenda. We have a few items on here, so if anybody wants to pull anything off, speak up after I go through it. Item 2A is the minutes from December 9th, 2025.
No, I don't
Item
think so.
2B is the minutes from November 11th, 2025. Item 2C is resolution number 1, series of 2026, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, designating the places for posting of public meeting notices. Item 2D is resolution number 2, series of 2026, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, authorizing and appointing Gloria Kochberger as the town's ex officio representative to the Airport Advisory Board. And then last, item 2E, which is 2026 discretionary grant recommendations. Jeff, since it's a discretionary grant recommendation, does that necessitate a roll call for consent agenda? I know normally we wouldn't for the,
No, because the money's already appropriated.
Okay.
This is the actual just spending within the fund.
great. Unless anyone would like to pull any of those items off to discuss, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you all. Next up, we have our item 3, which is the call to the public. Limit your comments to 3 minutes, and you can address your comments directly to me. Identify yourself by name and address, and make sure you sign in the back of the room. If I don't see anybody in here, but if there were someone here. I always ask you to be courteous, civil, and constructive, and town council will make no decision nor take action except to direct the town manager. Does anyone want to make public comments? I don't see anyone online or in the room. So I will go ahead and close that part of the meeting. And we'll move on to item 4, which is our mayor and council reports comments. Anything there? Anybody have anything? Sounds like it's a no. And I don't really have anything either, not for this week. Yeah. So we'll just move right along and get a little closer to being caught up and go to item 5, which is our manager's report. Gloria.
The only pressing thing I have is that Friday I'll be doing a meet and greet at Starbucks at 9 a.m. over in Willits. And I hope people can join us there. And also to subscribe to our newsletter as we are putting more content, town-wide content in our newsletter. David and I also talked about performance review for myself happening at the end of March. So before the new council is set, that would be like a kind of a 6-month mark.
Yeah.
Already?
Well,
6 months?
Time flies
essentially,
there
yeah.
at that point.
With this council.
Yeah, with this council.
And we're going to align the cycle to be more along annual with the council versus annual with the calendar, when you have sometimes situations where people weren't there for the whole year, doesn't make as much sense, so. Great, thanks, Gloria. Next up, we have our council actions. So item 6A is a public hearing and second reading ordinance number 22, series of 2025, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending Town Code Section 16-188 to regulate the use of non-functional turf, non-functional artificial turf, and invasive plant species as landscape elements for development and redevelopment projects within the Town of Basalt. Carlton, you're up to bat and all ready to go.
Good evening, Council. I am here, as the Mayor just mentioned, to bring forward a public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 2022, series of 2025, seeking to bring the Town of Basalt into compliance with state regulation related to non-functional turf grass, non-functional artificial turf, and invasive plant species. Just to bring you guys back up to speed on this, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed the application or the ordinance on November 18th, 2025, and recommended approval of ordinance number 2022 to establish this local regulation in accordance with the state regulation. Town Council reviewed and passed this ordinance on first reading 7-0 back in December, and no changes were suggested. With that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions about the ordinance that you guys may have, or if anything has come up in the meantime.
Thanks, Carlton. This is a public hearing, so I will go ahead and open the public hearing. And you've got the time there for it. And
6:34.
thank you. Oh, there's where it's
I'll
on the
call it there, yeah.
I don't see anybody coming up, and I don't see anybody online, so I will close the public hearing and open it up for questions or comments. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that the Town Council adopt ordinance number 22, series of 2025 on second reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. Let's begin with Angel Dupré-Bouchard.
Yes.
Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Rick Stevens.
Yes.
Hannah Berman.
Yes.
Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. Angela Anderson.
Yes.
And David Knight.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Carlton. Next up is item 6B. It's a public hearing and second reading ordinance number 23, series of 2025. An ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving an easement agreement related to a water line at 135 East Homestead Drive. Justin, you're up for this one.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight for the public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 23, approving a water line easement with the property owner at 135 East Homestead Drive for an existing town water main. The town's water main is located just east of the 135 East Homestead Drive property and runs in a north-south direction. When utilities are located outside of the public right-of-way, it's standard practice to protect public infrastructure and ensure safe and reliable service by entering into an easement agreement such as the one presented in your packet. The property owner has agreed to grant the easement. There's been no changes since first reading, so I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
This is, thank you for that.
Yeah.
This is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing at 6:36. And if anybody would like to come up or speak online, there's nobody coming up here in the room or speaking online, so I will close the public hearing and open it up for questions or comments from fellow councilors or entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that the Town Council adopt ordinance number 23, series of 2025 on second reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Let's begin with Rick Stevens.
Yes.
Hannah Berman.
Yes.
Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Hey.
Thank you, Ryan. Angela Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you, Angela. David Knight.
Yes.
Angel Dupré-Bouchard.
Yes.
And Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Next up is item 6C, which is a first reading of ordinance number 1, series of 2026, ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending the town code sections 11-1 and 11-178 to license, permit, and regulate the use of town rights-of-way, sidewalks, or other town property within the town of Basalt. Michelle and Carlton, you have this one.
Back again. As the mayor just introduced, I'm here to introduce it and present on first reading ordinance number 1, series of 2025, seeking to approve code amendments to town code. Some background on this one, guys. With the completion of the Midland Avenue streetscape, and, you know, I'm sorry, 2026. With the completion of the Midland Avenue streetscape project and, you know, increased commercial activity in the town of Basalt, staff is seeking to establish a standard process for use of public property and the activation of town rights of way. This proposed code amendment aims to provide a standardized process for use of town property, such as sidewalks, by commercial, private, institutional, and other non-public users. The purpose of this new section is to encourage the appropriate use of sidewalks and activation of streetscapes within the town of Basalt for commercial and other public-facing uses, while ensuring that sidewalk connections are maintained between building entries and public sidewalks. Provisions are included related to the establishment of outdoor seating areas for restaurants, informational kiosks, commercial displays, art installations, and other methods of creating positive activity on our sidewalks. In addition to the requirements of this section, use of private or public sidewalks must be consistent with the permitted uses allowed in the zone district. The use of public right-of-way must be approved through an encroachment license additionally, in section 1.3 of the Basalt Home Rule Charter. In layman's terms, we're looking to provide a standard process for folks who, you know, again, want to use our public right-of-way, our public sidewalks, and help encourage more activity in our commercial districts. Currently, people who are looking to do that come forward for an encroachment license. We're also just creating an internal staff process that makes the process clear to folks who want to come forward and use those spaces. That's what I have.
Thank you very much. We're not in a public hearing this week, but, and those encroachment licenses are for, not for like a temporary thing, like lighting the tree or whatever. If somebody wants to do that, these are more for long-term tables outside, things like that, or is it both?
So particularly lighting a tree, we do allow temporary lighting from November 15th to February 15th? Yeah, approximately. But the idea is for more permanent uses would be the encroachment license, and then additionally establishing standards for use of private property that acts as a public thoroughfare as well. So people who are looking to make more permanent changes to their site plan in what would otherwise be like publicly accessed space.
Yeah, just I think to what you're saying, as we have restaurants wanting to put tables and chairs on our new awesome space on Midland, we just need to formalize the process for that.
That makes sense.
So, and potentially in Willits as well.
Okay. But not like if somebody's coming out just for one night before we light the tree, that's what, like a one-off,
Yeah.
they wouldn't need to do it.
No,
Okay.
no. Or if you have clothing racks outside your store and you bring them in at night.
Things like that, yeah. That's a good clarification. Anybody else have questions or comments?
Is it necessarily changing what has been allowed in the past, or it's just formalizing the process?
It's just formalizing it. This is one of these policies that it just hasn't been documented well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same as what's existed. It's just formalizing it. It kind of goes back to our discussion earlier about the land use code needing to be generically overhauled. This is a missing item there.
And I'll add on to that where, previously folks would come in for an encroachment license and there weren't necessarily established use requirements. You'll see in section D of the ordinance, there are a number of criteria that folks just need to meet. And so we're able to then fall back on that to have a standard that's, you know, equally and equitably kept for folks.
Any other questions? or
Makes
comments?
sense to me. Mayor, I move that the town council approve ordinance number 1, series of 2026 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for January 27th, 2026.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Let's begin with Angela Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you. David Knight.
Yes.
Angel Dupré-Bouchard.
Yes.
Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Rick Stevens.
Yes.
Hannah Berman.
Yes.
And Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all. Thanks, Carlton and Michelle. All right. Next up is item 6D, first reading ordinance number 2, series of 2026. It's an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving amendments to Basalt Municipal Code, Article 8, use of town parks and other town property, to add a new section 11-179, parks and facilities reservations, and adoption of a fee schedule for reservation of public space within the town of Basalt. And Michelle and Carlton, you have this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm here to present first reading of ordinance number 2, series of 2026, as was just introduced, relating to parks and public facilities reservations. With the continued improvement of the parks, open space, and facilities infrastructure within the town of Basalt, staff is seeking to improve the efficiency of processes to apply for events on town property. Currently, information differentiating a parks reservation from a special events activity permit are in different locations, actually in different buildings as well. One reviewed at Town Hall and one reviewed with the Planning Department. And the associated fees have also been identified by Town Council as needing review, as they're seriously outdated. With the creation of the River Park and establishment of a capital planning process in the last several years, parks, trails, and open space within the town of Basalt have required a return to these processes and the fee schedule as well. The proposed ordinance number 2 would create clarity, consistency, and fairness of use for public property. Would also bring those fees, as I mentioned, back like up into language is escaping me.
To an appropriate level of our current investment in our parks and facilities.
Correct. Thank you. The proposed ordinance amends town code and establishes a fee schedule for special events and reservations on public property. And the code amendment language in the draft ordinance also establishes standards for events on town property, including but not limited to waste management, security, and insurance. Similar to the previous ordinance that was presented, a number of these things have been informally enforced, and this code amendment seeks to put these standards into a standard process and into our code, giving staff a way to manage and equitably review applications for events and reservations within the town. The goal here is to also create a little bit of a differentiation between your birthday parties in town parks and your desire to hold large events, which have a significant impact on our infrastructure. Those require different things from staff, and the goal here is to capture what requires staff time and how much time and energy is required for those small reservations and what's required for those larger special events. And then also what events might have a town-wide impact through closure of things like streets or through the closure or usage of the river park. So with that, I will open it up to any questions or differ.
I have one. Does this apply to nonprofits, rec programs, clubs, organizations that aren't there to create an event, but there to serve their population, whether it's a softball game or a lacrosse game or a rugby game or whatever it is? And I looked at this and I didn't see the Willits Field on there on the list. Is that on there somewhere? I saw all the rest of them, but
Mentioning the rugby field?
Yeah. Willits.
I see Willits Rugby
Is it right there?
Park.
It's in the fee schedule, yeah.
So in the past, I think we had an arrangement for nonprofits, as long as they met all the criteria, you know, with trash and everything else, that there wasn't necessarily a fee. And if it's gonna change, then I think some of those users maybe should get a notice that they have an opportunity to weigh in. I don't think it's a big deal, I just think it's,
Yeah.
that's,
We have, so, in the instance of an organized lacrosse event, for example, so there'd be a difference between reserving the park for weekly practice, which would fall under park reservation, which there's no fee for, versus having a tournament, which has different. So, but we can't say, based on that, we don't know how many people are in the tournament, or if we're asking to close parking, all those things. So that's what this, there are thresholds in here that hopefully people can see all in one place, because they have been in different spots. I do believe we have an exemption for nonprofits in here. However, we still require that if it's a special event activity permit, if someone is having their annual fundraiser in one of our parks, then they're going to have hopefully a large number of attendees, 200 plus attendees. There's a fee for us going through the process because we have all of our agencies involved there. And we take deposits as well, which we're always happy to refund, and that's the goal, as long as there's no damage and everybody is abides by what the conditions were for approval there. One of the reasons besides putting all of this information in one spot here is, as we talked about, I think it was early last year, Post talked about this as well, is protecting our asset really in the Basalt River Park and maintaining that to be open for the public use and kind of resisting having private events take that over and not be open to the public. So that's part of streamlining this information and really trying to clarify what constitutes a special event activity permit. When you have to close parking or a street is one of the biggest thresholds, versus reserving a park for your birthday party.
well, that makes sense.
And that being said, just to be really clear here, having a special event activity, a special event in any of the parks is pretty standardized. If something is going to happen or someone requests to have it in the Basalt River Park specifically, it will come to you for approval no matter what, just because that is a really unique asset for our town.
Makes sense.
I remember having a customer at Albany and went through this process, and I don't think we had to pay anything for that, but I can imagine something else that's not like that, not a nonprofit would. And I was just kind of comparing rates from also with doing scout stuff over at Crown, and they're in the same ballpark, for comparing size. So it felt right. Thanks for
So
doing that.
just so I'm understanding, if somebody wants to have a birthday party, because this is the example I'm using because this is what I see all the time, at the Albany Park shelter, they would pay a $50 fee to use that shelter and a $200 deposit that would then be refunded to them.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Has it
depending
always
on-
been that way, those amounts?
No.
No, these are new.
This is specifically new. And so also so let's say it's a 10-person birthday party. We're not going to charge the $200 deposit.
Yeah, I guess that's my somewhat concern is I feel like $250 to kind of put up front for a kid's birthday party is pretty steep. And knowing obviously that you're, going to get that $200 back, but that's still, you're still out of pocket that money for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, it's really, we have a lot of annual returning events that are just park reservations.
Yeah.
The 200 is really more about, unfortunately, sometimes we have less responsible people who will overflow the trash.
Right.
And now we have overflown trash for the weekend because we're a small organization and we don't have staff that goes to the parks every weekend. So it's to deter that, and then also if there are impactful events, a bounce house. We just want to make sure that we're protecting the asset from that. So, but certainly if we get a reservation for 10 or less, it's something we can work with. We just kind of want to guide that out there for if a company is having their annual picnic there, also awesome.
Right.
But if they're going to have 100 people there, we want to make sure that they pack out and we're not having our public works foot the bill for somebody else's party there.
Yeah, I feel you'd be remiss to miss the accountability piece on that. And that's, I mean, $250 does seem steep, but, repair to the park is probably steeper.
What
And
about,
if people,
what about the reoccurring practices that happen at Willits? I think it's Monday through Thursday nights in the spring with Roaring Fork Lacrosse. Would they have a seasonal fee? We usually provide certificate of insurance and things like that with the application and a timeline. And we always understand that there might be some other use that's being planned, and we try to work around each other's groups. So how would that, on a seasonal basis, because we don't leave any footprint there at all, really. But
Yeah,
it is
so-
a parking thing, and there's a bunch of other stuff that goes on.
Sure, that would be a one-time application,
Okay,
yeah, with the one-time fee.
one-time fee. Okay.
and if people aren't reserving it, they're just bringing 8 kids over, setting up a party.
Right.
There's no fee, no application.
Exactly.
And the idea with the list here that you'll see in Exhibit B is for those specific facilities, and it's for use of, it's for reserved use of those things. So park shelter, stage, things of that nature.
You bring your own tent and your own folding chairs and table out on a field, you're good to go.
Correct. The one thing I will note is
Presumably you're
Don't
staking
stake it.
the
that's you
tent.
stake it. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta put stakes.
But, I don't know if I'm not sure how enforceable that'll be, but yeah.
Use your sandbags.
Yeah. That's,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Questions?
one more quick question. So I don't see like the actual field or the tennis courts. That's a separate thing than park shelters and special event permits, right?
Right,
Okay.
And will we have the application in Spanish too?
yes.
Amazing. Mayor, I move that the town council approve ordinance number 2, series of 2026 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for January 27, 2026.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Let's begin with David Knight,
Yes.
Angel Dupré-Bouchard,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
Rick Stevens,
Yes.
Hannah Berman,
Yes.
Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you. And
Wow.
What an entrance.
See that hustle?
and Angela.
I was like, wow, the
That's-
audio got really realistic.
That's for later.
Thank you,
Sounds like
Angela.
he's in
We
the
appreciate it. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next up, we have item 6E, which is resolution number 3, series of 2026. Resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving a deed restriction framework pursuant to the Basalt Deed Restriction Incentive Program framework. Michelle.
All right. So I'm excited to bring this resolution tonight. In 2025, Town Council approved a suite of affordable housing policies and programs that staff is continuing to work out and formalize in our building code or in our land use code. This request and resolution follows that framework for our deed restriction incentive program that was adopted and is in partnership with Eagle County. Eagle County has an existing program referred to as the Good Deeds Program, where they partner with municipalities within Eagle County to put deed restrictions on free market homes to ensure long-term affordability of new units without construction in our communities. So we've been presented with an opportunity to partner with them on a unit. The standard procedure in the Eagle County Good Deeds Program is that Eagle County participates with 15% of the purchase price, and the partner municipality matches the 15%. So that lowers the free market price by 30%. So that's the request here today. The unit in consideration is within the Basalt town limits, which was how our framework for the program that we discussed last year was outlined. So this is requesting that we match Eagle County. I did put the number in here. Oh, I might have taken it out. Oh, I did. $97,200 to complete this purchase and add a unit in.
No, I'll just add the resolution really approves the form of the deed restriction that will then encumber the property, which is kind of jointly held by the town and Eagle County. We've kind of started this draft, I guess, at the end of the year, so there is some authority for me to make any additional changes that might be needed to it, but that's part of this resolution, is to approve the form of that deed restriction.
Can you clarify on the full-time employment? Is that verification just when that person buys the house, or if they were to buy the house and then start working remote, do they keep the house?
So for the town of Basalt, it is that you continue to work full-time.
Mm-hmm.
So because this is in partnership with Eagle County, there's a little bit more flexibility in that aspect of the deed restriction, but we will require that for this initial purchase, it's full-time employment and verified. And typically we request re-verification every 1 to 2 years.
Great, yeah. And then presumably after a couple decades, you can retire and stay in that home, or what's the exit plan?
You know what, that's a small detail that I haven't gotten familiar with in the good deeds, but I think that I'm not going to say it because it changes with each one, but.
Someone has thought about this.
I have to I'm not 100% sure either, but I think I've read it. There's some provision for that in there.
There usually is, and in the Basalt Town Guide, in our housing guidelines, once you retire, if you volunteer for a pretty low threshold, you can maintain your housing unit. So that would be the default if Eagle County hasn't addressed it in here.
Mm-hmm.
And this resolution sets that framework for this initial house, but also subsequent houses that we partner with Eagle County Good Deeds, right?
Yes, exactly. And I had, Angela and I had the opportunity to introduce Gloria to this program, and at the morning of, I said, when these opportunities come up, because it just depends on when the buyer's offer gets accepted, it's kind of a quick firestorm of making it all happen, which happens to be the case here tonight. So luckily, you adopted the framework last year, and so there'll just be some massaging of some of the legal details before the buyer goes under full contract.
From a budgetary standpoint, then I know Doug, you and I think we talked about this in the fall at some point. There was, we had. I'm going to play this back to make sure I've got it right. We had budgeted $100,000 from the Basalt Forward 2030 bond funds, which is restricted to be used within the Basalt town limits. I don't believe we ever used that $100,000 last year, so we're going to do either a supplemental appropriation, I guess, of that money this year to cover that 97.2. Just want to make sure I had that straight.
Yeah, we could do that. We could also use some of the increase in lodging tax that we'd be having.
Yeah.
We could also use the short-term rental ordinance fee. So there's a number of different levers we can pull. I can tell you, from a revenue standpoint, we didn't budget any incremental revenue for all of those increases in taxes. Nor did we budget any sort of offset for these opportunities that present themselves. So I think it depends on really optically what we want to actually show how the money was spent.
Sure.
So I think we have some optionality. My view was that we don't have to decide that tonight.
One consideration is that Basalt Forward money has to be used in the town limits, where some of the other money, the ballot language doesn't stipulate that, where this is in town limits, so maybe use that,
Yeah, use it where
Use
you
it.
can.
yeah, because you can use it in there, where other money we can, there's partnership opportunities with West Mountain, et cetera. So just,
This is
Top of mind
this
for
is
me.
the first opportunity that's presented themselves. So
yeah,
there'll be
the whole
others,
thing.
there'll be other things that present themselves throughout the year
Mm-hmm.
to see then really what is it we really want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Because it'll ultimately be a finite supply of money.
Yeah. And it's great that we can make the impact with 100,000. I mean, that's a great, that's a win for sure.
Per unit.
Yeah, strikes me as like a development neutral way to keep local people in local homes, which is a win for the town.
Cool. Well, thank you.
I have one, the 3% cap, is that calculated on price before they're bought down, or the price is, if it was 1.5 and it went to 1.2 because we put in, or 1.3, whatever it is the 3% cap on the 1.3 or the 1.5
It's 3% on the discount.
on the discount price? Okay. So there's no chance of somebody recovering that 200K down the road with a,
No, because they're not
Election on the-
recovering it, right? We've paid it, so it's stabilizing it at that lower,
it'll always be on the discount cost.
right?
Okay.
I think this is
Any
a
other
great
questions?
idea. Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 3, series of 2026.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Let's begin with Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
Rick Stevens,
Yes.
Hannah Berman,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angel Dupré-Bouchard.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
So next up, we have an exec session, so I would entertain the motion written there. Someone wants to make that?
That the town council enter executive session for the purpose of a conference with our attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions in accordance with CRS 246402-4B, specifically to discuss the Shoshone Water Court case.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right, well, thank you. This is going to go ahead and end the regular portion of our meeting. We're going to go into exec session. Once that's done, the meeting will be adjourned. So have a great evening for those watching on TV, and we'll catch you later. Jeff,
I wonder if
we
I
got
wanted Dieter to like.
I know, we really